get into the panel discussion then, and let's move on to our first question. So this first question, what I'd like is briefly, if I could ask each panelist to describe one significant challenge that their organisation is facing or has recently faced, or people that the organisations that they've worked with, the implications for process, data controls, risk and compliance, and as a quick follow-on, how that's relevant to companies that are forming their digital transformation strategies or undertaking strategic technology-enabled change. Can I start with you, David?
Yeah, Brian. So in the last 18 months in my time as IT Director of Specsavers, we faced a new compliance regulation in one of our countries in Norway, where we had to comply with some retail tax and audit regulations on a fixed deadline. The challenge was that the systems that we had in Norway were 25-year-old legacy systems, which were never designed or envisaged to have to cope with fairly detailed changes to make them compliant. So we were faced with two options. One was to try to work with the old technology to introduce compliance, but the option we took was to take the opportunity of a necessary compliance project to replace the systems, and this is software and data in each individual store, and if you like, to make a virtue out of a necessity. So we took that option to our board of directors. We negotiated a elongation of the compliance deadline. My experience that as many compliance deadlines can be negotiated if you have a clear intention and plan to meet the compliance. And to cut a very long story short, we met the deadline, replaced the systems in all of our stores, and landed with a technical platform that was in a far better place. It was our global retail Specsavers product rather than one we'd inherited by acquisition, and we addressed the compliance at the same time. So I guess quick answer to your second point, Brian, is that compliance, while it's a necessary evil, if you like, can present an opportunity to justify a wider business improvement, a digital transformation project, as well as meeting the compliance deadline in our case.
That's great. Great, thank you, David. Thanks, that's really good. Nav, in the organisations and clients that you're working with, are you seeing some different challenges that you can relate to the topic?
Yes. So a recent example. So a client of mine, which is a global telecom company, they're based out of North America, Africa, and Europe. They got listed on the stock exchange in the US, the NASDAQ, and as part of that move, there is something that called as Sarbanes-Oxley compliance that you need to comply with. So it's mandatory for every listed company in the US, which resulted in significant changes to the way the business was run, because the business in the past was run pretty autonomously in every single operation, whereby now we had to make changes to centralize a lot of those processes and controls. So especially in your financial, accounting, and procurement processes. So that was a really large transformation program, and digital transformation was a part of that. From a risk and compliance perspective, this was mandatory. You have to be SOX compliant and you can't fail it. From a cost perspective, we had to be very mindful, because some of the changes would have resulted in significant costs to centralize various systems and hardware and personnel costs. So decisions were taken to move towards the cloud and use some software as a service applications. So that journey was quite interesting. At the end of it, of course, we passed compliance, and a lot of lessons learned during that exercise. But digital transformation is here to stay, and cloud offerings are here to stay. So how you evaluate risk and compliance for those areas is a new field. So we can talk a little bit more about that in future questions, Brian.
Great, thanks, Nav. Adil, would you like to summarise what you've heard and maybe share some of your experiences as well?
Yeah, I think you heard in summary, two great justification of why companies move, to borrow a word from David, why companies move to a new digital platform, right? It's and they're both music to my ears because they're compliance, and that's what we do, right? So compliance is an agent of change. It's not the only agent. We all know that. There are many other reasons through M&As and other things that occur in an organization's life cycle, but it is an important agent. So if you are looking to move to a more digital platform, it may be compliance like the Sarbanes-Oxley or a tax or some other reason why old systems just can't scale to the current challenges of your compliance need. And more timely, I'll just add to that, today, in today's environment, risk has become more prominent front and center in terms of boards and senior management's ability to execute in these challenging times. So risk has become just as important. And I'll talk a little bit about risk when we talk about key risk indicators. So yeah, compliance and risk are key factors in helping you transform to a digital platform. Unfortunately, as you saw from the BPM study, once companies use these initiatives as business justifications, they don't embed them into their key processes, and that's where that the study really helps us bring that to the center of our discussion today. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's something we've seen as well, Adil, where clients might identify the need up front, but almost forget about it until the end, and then want to almost bolt on governance and risk and compliance monitoring at the end, and realize that they haven't built in some of the key things that they need along the way. And we'll talk a bit more about that in a while.